This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my review of Dune Part 2. And, to be fully honest, I'm not a huge Dune fan. I thought the first film was okay, and all this one is good. I'm not going to be the person who is talking about how this is one of the greatest films ever because, honestly, it was just something I could appreciate and thought was well done. It's just something I was never fully interested in, and the only reason I went is because I actually knew someone else who wanted to go and knew they wanted to go unless someone went, and I decided to go with them. But yeah, honestly, I did enjoy this movie though. I don't regret seeing it, and it was actually really well done. There is some criticisms I have. I feel like there are parts where it just feels like a bunch of time passes and a bunch of stuff happens where it probably could have been expanded on just a little bit more, but at least it's better than what I was told happened when people went to the original one from I think like the 70s or 80s. I stopped at a local toy store after I saw the movie and was talking to the owner, and he told me a story about how when people went to the original, they were given an entire booklet to, tell them what's happening in the movie, and they were expected to read this entire book. It was like 4 or 5 pages to be able to understand what's going on in the movie. So, although it's not as bad as that, it just feels like there are parts where things seem to be either kind of skipped over or just finished in such a fast amount of time that it feels like, you might have like passed out for a minute and missed something, but I didn't, and it just felt a little weird there. And going through the entire thing, that's my only real criticism. Really, besides that, the story was engaging, and it ultimately does get to a pretty satisfying end. And it feels like, something that they could have, if they really wanted to, as being the original author, probably could have split this up a bunch more. And, could have done something more like Star Wars where it takes them a while to take down their emperor. But in this, it was still interesting, and obviously they're adapting a novel, so they can't change too much without having a bunch of people with pitchforks and torches coming after them. But yeah, honestly, that's not even, real criticism. I'm just saying that it's just interesting that story that, especially compared to, how stories are done today, how they aren't really setting it up for sequels or anything. And although with this, I'm not sure if the original book had the full-on sequel set up where the families didn't accept his uh, taking the emperor title, but it still is, it still is interesting to set up a third movie. And yeah, honestly, I think that this is, one of the best ways to adapt a book, which is to split it into a two-part movie. And that is just to get as much of it as possible in there and gives you a lot more time to tell it without making it into a 3.5 to 4 hour movie because even then you're not going to have time to tell everything. Just look at Lord of the Rings because realistically, Lord of the Rings could have been released as 6 movies with one focusing on each section, well, each book that Tolkien wrote since, although he released 3 books, each have two sub books in them. And that would honestly just be the, I think, the perfect way to do adaptations of books to split them into two parts where, the studio will make more money and they're able to adapt more from the books. Of course, you'll get the rare time where they perfectly manage to put everything from one book into a movie, and then there's also just so much they have to cut, which is just something, as you can looking at Lord of the Rings, where you need extended editions of them to get almost everything in there. And when I say extended editions, Lord of the Rings is unique, where most extended editions add maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but they add, if you don't count the credits, that they extend by like 30 minutes, like an additional 30, 40 minutes to each Lord of the Rings one. And I don't really know Dune, but I might rather do as much here, since they would be able to just adapt all the essential stuff and some of the smaller but cooler moments without, making word for word recreation. When you go and make it a trilogy, it sometimes is extending things out because although I did enjoy the Hobbit trilogy, I definitely agree that it could have been released as two movies, and that probably would have just made a more solid story overall. But yeah, as I was saying, I think that it really is a great story, and suddenly split into two parts isn't really the best because I believe I mentioned this in my first review of the first one. That's kind of a redundant statement, but I just realized I was gonna say first one and I said first review, and I don't really feel like editing this part out, so it's a fun little add-on. But I mean, fun thing back to that, I remember saying that even though there was a bunch of stuff that I personally didn't understand and appreciate as much, I'm glad it's in there for the fans. That might have been a different movie, but I'm pretty sure it was this movie because, as I said, I may not, be a Dune fan and may not understand these deeper cuts and stuff more built in for the hardcore fan base. I'm glad it's in there because that's what I love to see in stuff like Star Wars, Middle Earth, DC, Marvel, and more because it's just really nice. And I think that this was a really solid film, and I would recommend checking it out because everything with it is really great, and I would definitely check this out again. I didn't watch the first movie before I saw it. I was meaning to and just didn't have the time. And yeah, honestly, I want to know what you think because all this was a review of the movie. I went on a bunch of side tangents, but still, I think that it is a solid movie. And just the other really it's more of a weird thing is how they're making the character Paul basically like space Jesus. I don't know. It's just something I kind of noticed that they're trying to make him like the Dune version of Jesus, and maybe that was just put into my mind because of some movie trailer about what looked like the birth of the Antichrist that I saw before it. Because of course they had to show a trailer for basically every movie that's coming out in the next like 8 months. But I don't know, I think there was just that thing where you're just looking at it and it felt like you're going to be seeing this is like a really clear parallel between him and being basically Space Jesus. But let me know what you think. Did you pick up on that too, or am I just completely missing something? Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.